Hey everyone, welcome to My Fave Toys. Today we'll be talking about the Goonies.
Ever since I was a boy, I have been obsessed with toys, action figures, fashion dolls. I don't care, I love them all. My fave toys, these are my favorite toys.
You may or may not know this, but June the 7th is officially Goonies Day, and I wanted to take a moment to celebrate the amazingness, the wonder that is this movie called The Goonies. I will never forget, it was the summer of 1985 on a Saturday afternoon, and my sister Caroline tells me, Stefan, we're going to the cinema tonight, we're gonna go see The Goonies. And I remember asking myself, what's The Goonies? And the minute the movie started, you see the skull, you hear that exciting music start, and then first few minutes you're introduced to the premise of the movie and every single character. I was hooked. Not just that day, but for that whole summer and for life. A couple days later, my best friend Matthew knocks on my door, tells me, you're looking at a Goonie. He was a believer. And we started our own club. There was only 3 people. It was me, Matthew, and Andrea. And that didn't last too long, but I'll never forget, 15 years later when they were celebrating the 15th anniversary of the movie, they re-released it on big screen, and Matthew and I went to see it. And it was really cool to see it with adult eyes. And I can't believe that pretty soon the movie will be 40 years old. And I tried to push it onto my nieces and nephews, and they were like, meh. It's one of those movies where you had to be there. Kind of like Stranger Things. You either love it or you just have no interest for it, because I think if you've experienced the 1980s, it's so much of a time capsule filled with nostalgia that's so amazing. And beyond that, I know for me, it was telling me that adventure is just around the corner, because there's something that Steven Spielberg does in his movies where things can happen just like that in a very realistic fashion. Even though his movies are they're roller coaster rides of fun, it just seems like things can be possible when it comes to his movies, and The Goonies is no exception. There's not many toys when it comes to The Goonies. There's a few commemorative lines. I know Funko Pop came out with their big-headed figures. There's a line by Mesco and NECA. My favorite was the line done by Super 7. And Super 7 has a reaction line that, goes through pretty much all the greatest movies of all time. And they did a Goonies line as well. And, limited articulation like they had in the 80s, but just, super detailed, super great. And you look at the card backs, they're super fun as well. These figures came out in 2014. And not too long after that, I was at Comic-Con with my nephew Justin. And we're walking through the vendors, and one of them has the full line of the 5 figures. And I was like, okay, how much for the set? And the vendor tells me, well, if you do the truffle shuffle, I'll give you a special deal. Do you think I hesitated? Of course not. And I thought my nephew would be embarrassed, but he was like, do your thing. You do you. So I got the set of 5 figures. In the lineup of the Super 7 reaction figures, you have Mikey, of course. You have Mouth, Data, and Chunk. And Chunk is a little bit funny because they're all wonderful and they're super well sculpted, except Chunk has really long arms. And here is the sloth figure, complete with removable pirate's hat. And I actually created a couple of extras because I like to do toy photography, as you know. There was no brand, Andy, or Steph, so I created these out of Glamour Gals figures that Kenner created back in the early 80s. And I repainted them so that they look a little bit more like the characters. And they're a little bit taller than the kids, so I wanted that ratio for the photos. And of course, there's, more and more Goonies memorabilia. I actually got the copper bones. My sister Natalie gave this for my birthday a couple of years ago. I mean, Goonies never say die, and I never seem to grow out of my childhood phase, so I love getting these things. So that was my ode for a really wonderful movie that to this day is one of my favorites. This magazine actually I got at Comic-Con maybe a year before I got the figures. And I actually owned this back in '85. I had to get 2 because the first one I used up so much that it completely fell apart. Everything was just completely dog-eared and torn apart by the time the summer ended. So I found a second one and used that up. And, 30 years later, I found a great copy of it, which was really fun. And what's really cool is they had all the behind the scenes of the movie, including the video done with Cyndi Lauper. I mean, I was obsessed with Cyndi Lauper, and when I saw her in the movie and, heard that she was singing the theme song, I pretty much lost it. It not only became my favorite movie, it became the ultimate movie. So happy Goonies Day, everyone. And remember, Goonies never say die.